This being your third season, it seems like you've been a lot more assertive or spicy this year.
Spicy? I don't know, spicy. That's cool. I mean, I feel like for me, it's just my approach. It's just coming in and just trying to be dominant in anything the team needs. And so if that gives off spicy, which I really don't think it does, I feel like I'm like kind of quiet.
Spice?
No, I just not spicy. But yeah, I feel like that's just been my mindset, is just coming in and just being the player that I need to be for us. Whatever that looks like, it looks like.
What do a powerful locker room mantra, a dominating blowout victory, and a secured playoff berth all have in common? For the Indiana Fever, the answer is simple: everything. Their 94-65 dismantling of the Washington Mystics was far more than just another win in the column. It was a declaration of survival and defiance combined into one. At the center of it all stood Aliyah Boston, who delivered a line that immediately caught the attention of her teammates and left fans eager to know more. What exactly did she say? And why has that single statement become the driving mindset that is now carrying Indiana into the postseason, even without their superstar Caitlin Clark and 4 other sideline contributors? Stick around, because this story is about much more than basketball. It's about resilience, identity, and a team rewriting expectations. And if you're fired up for playoff basketball, drop "Fever Playoffs" in the comments right now. This is the moment. Playoffs are here. The energy is real. Let's go. From the opening tip, you could sense Indiana's determination. Transition plays came fast and sharp, with Fitch slashing into the lane to put in the team's first bucket. Moments later, Sims broke down her defender with a double cross, carved into the paint, and finished at the rim. The tone was set. Still, one has to ask, how can a team that has lost nearly half its rotation still manage to fight, survive, and ultimately thrive? That's the story of the Fever's 2025 season. Their roster wasn't just hit with injuries, it was gutted. Caitlin Clark, the sensational sophomore expected to lead Indiana into a new era, was lost after only 13 games with a devastating torn groin. Sophie Cunningham was sidelined with a knee injury. Chloe Bibby's season ended because of her knee as well. Sydney Colson went down. Ari McDonald was shut down with a foot injury. One by one, 5 crucial contributors disappeared. For most teams, that kind of loss marks the end of the road. But for Indiana, it became the ultimate test of identity and resolve. Looking back at the beginning of the season, if anyone had predicted that this is what the Fever's year would look like, that they'd be stripped down, patched together, and somehow still fighting in the postseason, the reaction would have been disbelief. Most players and fans alike would have thought, no way. Nobody could have foreseen a season unfolding with so many blows stacked against this team. And yet here they are. Of all the injuries, Clark's absence was the hardest to absorb. She was averaging more than 16 points per game, orchestrating the offense with her elite playmaking, and giving Fever fans genuine hope that the postseason wasn't just a dream, but an expectation. So when the announcement came down that she would miss the rest of the season, the shockwave wasn't limited to Indiana, it rippled across the entire basketball world. Fans who had been filling Gainbridge Fieldhouse suddenly wondered how this team could possibly keep pace without its brightest star. Analysts lined up to declare the Fever's playoff run over before it even began. But inside the locker room, the message was different. Even though things looked more difficult, the players committed to sticking together, to finding joy in the game, and to playing as one regardless of who was out on the floor. And Clark wasn't the only blow. The constant shuffle of hardship signings made Indiana look less like a stable roster and more like a moving train that players were hopping onto mid-ride. 18 different players suited up in Fever uniforms at some point this season. Imagine taking a team photo on opening night, and by the halfway mark realizing most of those faces had been swapped out. Odyssey Sims stepped in and brought her spark. She petty carved out minutes and made them count. Aerial Powers found her rhythm and built a role. This wasn't a carefully mapped strategy, it was survival in its purest form. And survival doesn't usually lead to the postseason. Yet, as head coach Stephanie White pointed out, when a team goes through this kind of adversity, it has 2 paths. It either fractures apart, or it uses that pain as fuel to grow stronger, to play harder for one another, and to honor the teammates who were lost to injury. For Indiana, it became the latter. White's leadership proved critical. She didn't panic, she didn't try to overhaul the system. Instead, she simplified it, streamlined rotations, and focused on building from the ground up. She and her staff thought outside the box to maximize every ounce of talent available. White never tried to pretend the adversity wasn't there. She leaned into it, reminding her players how tough they were, physically and mentally, and the roster bought in. By August, what once looked like a death sentence transformed into a hidden weapon. The lack of a single superstar forced every woman to shoulder responsibility. The mantra of, "next woman up," stopped being just a coping phrase and turned into a defining identity. That resilience carried straight into Washington, where the Fever didn't just win, they dominated. Every ounce of toughness they had been forced to develop over the season came pouring out on the floor, and it exploded into a statement performance. Inside, Natasha Howard muscled through defenders, converting through contact for the bucket and the foul. On the perimeter, Petty splashed threes with confidence. Aerial powers powered her way to the rim, refusing to let possessions die. Every Fever player contributed to the onslaught. By the final horn, the scoreboard read Fever 94, Mystics 65. Indiana was officially in the playoffs. Think about it. How do you transform heartbreak and attrition into a 29-point demolition on the road? The Indiana Fever answered that question in the loudest way possible. Their victory over the Mystics wasn't just about advancing. It was a message to the rest of the WNBA. Yes, they lost Caitlin Clark. Yes, they were ravaged by injuries. But this team isn't powered by just one star, it's driven by an unshakable collective will. To be fair, it didn't look like a blowout at first. Washington came out swinging, forcing Indiana into tough shots and trading buckets to keep the game close. The Fever's offense looked shaky early, and if you were watching, you could feel the nervous energy. The Mystics had momentum, and with Clark, Cunningham, McDonald, Bibby, and Colson all out, the doubt was real. Could Indiana hang on, or was this going to be another night where they just ran out of steam? But this Fever squad refused to fold. As Stephanie White later pointed out, most teams in the league would have crumbled after going through the relentless blows Indiana faced. But not this one. They just kept getting tougher, smarter, and more resilient. They figured things out on the fly, rebuilt their chemistry again and again, and no matter how many roster changes they endured, they stayed accountable, flexible, and unified. By halftime, the game was still close. But everything changed in the third quarter. That's when Indiana's defense clamped down in a way that completely suffocated Washington. The Mystics managed just 9 points in the entire frame. 9. That's not just a slump, that's a defensive masterclass. Passing lanes were clogged, drives were cut off, and every shot attempt was contested. Suddenly, Indiana wasn't just holding its ground. It was the hungrier, sharper, and more aggressive team on both ends. The lead grew from double digits to 20, then 25, and at one point stretched to 33. The rout was on.